Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Mastering Data Tables, a comprehensive guide to using VOCSTATS. My name is Martin Smolka, and I'll be your presenter for today's webinar. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which we are meeting today and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Today we are using GoToWebinar by LogMeIn. For those who aren't familiar with this platform, I'll briefly explain some of the components. To the left of the screen is the GoToWebinar viewer, through which you will see the presentation. To the right is the GoToWebinar control panel, where you can select audio mode and ask questions. To join the audio portion of today's webinar using VoIP, choose computer audio, otherwise select phone call. You can use the questions panel to the right of your screen and submit written questions and comments online at any time. For privacy reasons, only we can see your questions, and we'll acknowledge all the questions and comments submitted via the questions panel, either during the webinar today or afterwards via email. So today's webinar is about the NCVER VOCSTATS tool and how you can master the various functions to confidently build data tables to meet your research needs. Some of the topics I'll be covering today include creating and modifying data tables, creating custom data derivations and fields, and analysing data using built-in charts. So as I've mentioned, this webinar will be about how to master building of the data tables in VOCSTATS. But before I look at the various features, I'll provide an introduction to the system. As some of you who are watching this may have limited knowledge of it, or it might be your first time seeing the software today. So the key points about VOCSTATS are that it's designed as a table building and data visualization tool. And by that I mean we take the data from the tables that we build and we display it in a chart or a graph. It's designed to be used on a desktop or laptop computer with keyboard and mouse, so it's not something that can be used via a touch screen like on a tablet or a phone. It uses an account-based system where you register for access and you're provided with a username and password to log on. The main benefit of this is that you can start working on the table, finish at the end of the day, close your computer, and then the next day log in and start working where you left off. And another thing to mention is that registration is free. You can also customize your data tables, which is one of the greatest benefits of the software. So this includes functionality such as changing the layout of your table and also creating your own custom data with full control over labeling, which I'll cover during this webinar. VOCSTATS also has a very rich library of data, so that includes VET students, apprentices and trainees, and VET student outcomes, with certain databases having a long time series of data available, such as the apprentices and trainees, which goes back to 1994. So I'll now turn my camera off. This is just to provide you with a better view of VOCSTATS when I'm sharing the screen and showing you how to build tables. But first, I'll show you how to access VOCSTATS from the NCVER portal. So to access VOCSTATS, you can either type VOCSTATS into the search bar from our portal, like that, and you get a few results. You can click on any of these and that will take you to the VOCSTATS page. Alternatively, if we scroll down to the quick access section, there's a VOCSTATS link as well that we can just click on. And once we're on the VOCSTATS page, you'll have access to some general information about the product. And if we scroll down to the bottom, we can see there's a login and register section here. So the registration form is available from this link here. Once you fill that in, you will be sent a username and password to log in. And over here on the left-hand side, we've got a login to VOCSTATS link. So I'll click on the login to VOCSTATS link. And this is our main login page. So I've got my VOCSTATS username and password here. I've typed in before, and I'll click login. And so this is the main landing page for VOCSTATS. Once you log in, you'll see that on the left-hand side here, we've got a number of different data sets. So there's information here for apprentices and trainees. For student outcomes as well, we've got government-funded student outcomes and total vet student outcomes. There's databases for government-funded students and courses. There's time series and year-to-date databases. Total vet students and courses, you can see here we've got 3 databases, and there's also a vet in schools set of databases as well. So each of these databases has a description of what kind of data they have. So if I click on total vet students and courses and then program enrollments, on the right-hand side, you can see there's some information here about the scope. And looking through that, we can see that the data that it includes data on nationally recognised training activity delivered by registered training organisations. So to get started, I'll open up the TVA program enrolments database. I'll just double click on the database. And so what we've got here is a large empty white space on the right. So that's like our blank canvas, which we use to build our data tables. And on the left-hand side here is the main list of fields. So you can see that these fields on the left-hand side are broken up into different categories. So we've got training provider attributes here, data submitter attributes, client attributes, and also right at the bottom we've got program attributes. So these will differ depending on the type of database that you open. So what you see here will be slightly different if you open up something like a TVA subject enrollments database. However, if we were to open up apprentices and trainees or a student outcomes database, it would probably differ quite a lot. So I'll get straight into building a simple table. So what we do as a start, go to the top, there's a year field here. So I'm going to select 2021 and 2022. And as soon as I've done that, you can see at the top, these buttons have been highlighted. I can then just click on one of those to add this information to the table. So I'll click on column. That's added those 2 years to the table. By default in VOCSTATS, you'll get a total that's applied. So we don't need a total for this particular case. So I'll click on these 3 dots here next to the year field and click on total, and that just removes that for us. Scrolling down, I'll go to the program attributes and click on the program level of education. So This is the data that we're going to add to the table. You can see that's what we're looking at here is certificate level or diploma and higher level data. There's also a non-AQF level. Another way of adding fields to the table is if I was to click on program level of education and drag to the right, then these three different options come in, so we can either add it as a column, a row, or a wafer, and I'll get into the wafer in a moment. But I'll add this data to the row for now. I'll add a little bit more information about the client. So I can go up to gender here. I can drag across to the column. So now we've added gender. We've got males, females, other, and not known. We turned off the total by default, but for this case, I'd like to add it. So again, go into that field, click on total, and now we've got a total for each year. The other options here are to add a wafer or a filter. I'll have a look at the wafer first. So using age as an example, if I open that up, we can see that there's a number of different age groups here. Now I can add this to the table, but adding it as a wafer, if I click and drag across, see what's happened is it's added the wafer up here, and it's then given us a drop-down menu. So it's cut this table by all the different age groups. So when we build this table, we'll have access to all these different classifications just by clicking on this drop-down menu. And finally, I will add a filter. And what I'll do, I'll scroll up to the top and have a look at state and territory of delivery location under the training provider attributes. And I can filter on Victoria just by clicking that checkbox and then clicking filter. And you can see here, there's a filter that's been added to the top of the table. To build the table or populate the data in the table, you click on Retrieve Data up here, and that will start to tabulate. You will get a little bit of variation in how fast the tables build across the various databases, depending on their size and complexity. The speed of building can also be impacted by how many fields are in your table, and also if there's a large number of users accessing the system. So there's our data, and as I said before, you can just switch to these different categories and it will change the information in the table. So to get the data out into a different format, there's a few different things we can do. On the top right-hand side here, we've got a download table button. So by default, we can download that to Excel. But there's a few different options. We can also download CSV, XML, zip, and JSON formats as well. Print is available, so if you do want to print a paper copy, or alternatively, you can actually print to PDF as well, that's available. And the other option is Save Table. So I'll click on Save Table here, and we're presented with another window. So as I was saying before, with VOCSTATS being an account-based system, where you can save your tables to your account and then close down and open up the next day, you'll then have access to all these tables again once they've been saved. So what I'll do, I'll just call this something simple like my first table. Just make sure you save that to your private folder here. Click Save. And you get a little message up the top here saying that the table's been successfully saved. To see where these tables have been saved to, there's a little Tables tab up the top here, and if we click on that, there it is. So all of the tables that you save will be populated in this window here. You can also manage the tables. So if I was to click on these three dots in the top right hand side, and there's an option here to manage tables. Click on that. It gives us some basic functions. So clicking on the checkbox here, we can copy, delete, or rename. So it gives us a few options with the tables that we've created. Some of the other buttons here, we have a clear table button. So if you want to completely start again, you can click on clear table, it will wipe everything. There's a settings button over here, which I'll get into a little bit later on, and there's also a trash button. So the idea behind the trash button is that you can just click and drag fields into there to remove them from your table. So if I click and drag on gender and then onto the trash, that will remove it. I can also get rid of these filters and wafers that I've added by clicking on this little X button. So I'll remove the filter and the wafer as well. So I'll now provide some examples of the program attribute data and move into some of the more advanced functions. Let's go back to fields and I'll clear the table. So whenever you clear the table, you'll get this message just saying that everything will be lost. So both the program and subject data are a key part of NCVER's collections, and I'll provide a little bit of context around those by going through some of the fields in this list here. So right at the bottom on program attributes, we've got the type of training. So this shows different types of qualifications and programs. For example, those that belong to training packages, accredited courses, or training package skill sets. If I drill down a little bit further into the training package qualifications, make the screen a little bit bigger here. You can see that underneath we've got a list of all these different training package groups. And I can drill down further. So if I clicked on CHC Community Services, for example, see that there's a large number of qualifications that exist under that package. You can see this little number here, 159, that's actually how many qualifications are listed under this particular folder. So I'll just minimize that so we've got a bit more room. Level of education, as we looked at before, that's based on the Australian Standard Classification of Education, or ASCED, including both AQF and non-AQF levels. We've got the program field of education as well, also based on ASCED, and that's a classification for educational activity in Australia, and that'll be for things like health, education, information technology, for example. And there's also ANSCO, which is the Australian and New Zealand Standard Classification of Occupation. So that's the intended occupation of the program. And if we were to drill down further into this hierarchy, we'd find things like hairdressers, bricklayers, chefs, plumbers, childcare workers, things like that. So I'll make an example. I'm going to drag all the years across into the column of the table and remove the total. And then what I'm going to do is search for childcare. Now, when we had a look at the training package qualifications before, it is possible to open these up and look through the individual course codes one by one, but there's quite a lot. So VOCSTATS does provide a search function, which is in the bottom left-hand side here. So if I was just to type in childcare, press the enter button or press filter tree, And what that's done is it's returned all of the fields within VOCSTATS that have the words child or care or both within them. Now, what I'm going to do is add CHC 30113 and CHC 30121 as a row. And I'll build the table. So what you can see here is that the CHC 30113, Certificate 3 in Early Childhood Education and Care, it's got a steady number of program enrolments all the way through to 2021, and then it drops significantly. So what's happening here is that it's probably been superseded by this newer version of that qualification, CHC 30121, and you can see that there's no data at all for this qualification for these years. We get a few program enrolments in 2021, but in 2022 we have almost a 50-50 split, and over time the one above the older qualification will get less and less and less and possibly go to zero. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at data for qualifications in VOCSTATS, that you might be looking at one that's current or one that's been superseded. Now, to clear the filter here that I've created, I just have to click on this X button to clear it, and that will take us back to the full field list. And I'll clear the table. I'll stay with program attributes now and show you how to add your own derivation to your table. So I'll add 2021-2 and remove the total. I'm going to scroll down to field of education. A lot of information open here, but it's right at the here somewhere. Now, this is at the 2-digit level here, program field of education. We can also drill down to the 4-digit level, but I'm going to add 2-digit to the table. And an easy way of doing that, rather than just clicking on all these checkboxes individually, there's a little arrow button here that says select all at level. So if I click on that, I can then choose to select everything at 2-digit level or everything at 4-digit. So I'll click on that and add that to the row. And I will build the table. So in a moment, what we'll be able to see is the different number of program enrolments across these fields of education. I've got this these sorting arrows underneath the year columns. So if I was to click on that, that's currently sorted ascending, and I can click on it again to sort descending, and we can see that the largest number program enrolments in 2022 was management and commerce, but it is down slightly on the previous year. So one useful thing you can do in VOCSTATS is create your own derivations. And I'll create 2 here, one where we just look at the actual change year on year, and then another one to look at the percentage change year on year. So I'll click on the year, these little 3 dots next to year, and say add derivation, and then represented with the defined derivation screen. So I'm going to call this actual change. And on the left-hand side here, you can see the field values. So V1 correlates to 2021, V2 to 2022. So we can then use that information in our formula area here. So I'm just going to say V2, V1, and create. And there's our first derived column, and we can see that it's dropped by about 38,000 over the year. I'll add another one now for this one, percent change. And I'll just enter a little formula here to calculate the year-on-year change. And this time I'll click on the Advanced tab at the bottom here, because what I want to do is add a decimal place. So I'm going to change 0 to 1. There's a few other things you can do here as well, like change the positioning of where you want to place this field as well. So I'll click on Create. And so now we've got a little bit more information to work with on our table. So if we wanted to, we could look at what the largest decrease was in actual change. Alternatively, we might want to look at differences in percentage change. The derivations can also be edited by clicking on the 3 dots here next to the names. So if I click on that and said edit, it just takes us back to the defined derivation screen, and we can change it or delete as well. There's another option. So I'll clear that table. Another very useful function of VOCSTATS is the custom data. So this allows us to create new fields, and a good example of this is age. I'll just roll these up so that we don't keep scrolling through the screen. A good example, as I was saying, is age, where VOCSTATS will actually provide you with some pre-prepared age groups. So underneath each of these, we have the individual ages. But you might look at that and think, well, I don't really want any of these. I'd rather have something that meets my particular research case. So what I'll do, I'll show you how to create your own age group. But this same methodology can be applied to all the different fields here. So to create custom data, we click on this button at the bottom here called Custom Data. That will open up a two-step custom data building screen. Step 1 at the top here is where we select the fields. So if I scroll down here to age, I will create a age group from 25 to 45 years. So what I'll do, I'll use these little select all at level arrows to choose all of the ages under this 25 to 29 group. And under 30 to 39, I could do that, or if I wanted to, I could also just go in individually and select all these. And we're going to create age group to 45 years, so I need to do that. Then add these to the group, and you can see that all of those ages we've selected have gone to this side, and we can just click Save now. And you get this Save Recode window, and you can give it a name. So I'll call it 25 to 45 years. Make sure that's saved in the private folder. Click Save. Straight away on the left-hand side here, you've got a new folder in the My Custom Data area. So anytime you create custom data, that will be added to this side of the screen. It knows that we've created it from the client attributes, from the age field, and there's our new custom field. So if you click on this, it does give you a few options. You can edit it, you can copy it or delete it. This download and upload function is also available, where you can download all this formatting to a CSV. you prefer to work with CSV, you can do that and create your own custom data fields. And you can also rename the field. So if I go to table view now, see that under age here, the first new one is 25 to 45 years, which is the one we've just created. And that can just be added to the table just like normal. And it operates just like every other field. It's a very useful function. There are some slight differences. For example, there's a drill down option for regular fields, where if I was to click on 15 to 19, it would open that up. That's not available for custom data, so I don't have that option there. But yes, it does operate like all the other regular fields apart from that. So I'll clear the table and now demonstrate how to build tables and view some charts using some of the geographical data available in VOCSTATS. So scroll down here. So VOCSTAT, we have statistical area in VOCSTATS, which is based on the Australian Statistical Geography Standard. And it can show data from state territory level down to the statistical area 2 level. Currently, our data includes 2011 and 2016 census years for this classification, but this will be updated to include the 2021 census for this particular database in future releases. There are other databases that already have the 2021 census information in there. It just depends on their release date. We also have student remoteness region. So this is it's basically a remote. It divides Australia into 5 classes of remoteness based on the measure of relative access to services. So whether they're major cities, inter-regional, outer remote, or very remote. We also have CEFA. We've got 4 different CEFAs here. So CEFA is the socioeconomic indexes for areas, and that combines census data such as income, education, employment, occupation, etc., against an area and ranks the areas according to their relative socioeconomic advantage or disadvantage. So for an example, I'll scroll down to the student SA2 folder. Look at statistical area, and I'll select the SA4 level for Victoria and add that to the row. So you can see now it's added all the different statistical area 4 areas to the table, and I'll also select a year, 2022. I'll create a filter for that. So now we're filtering on 2022 only, and I'll also select, just as an example, the student remoteness region or area, and I'll build the table. So before I put this data into a chart, what I'm going to do is remove some of the data that I don't need. So as you can see on the right-hand side here, there's a lot of columns that just have no data in them. So in Victoria, there are no remote or very remote regions. So to remove columns and rows that have just got zeros, click on this settings icon, go to zero suppression and click columns. And we'll do the same thing for the rows. So that's just cleaned up our table a little bit. Now to look at the built-in data visualizations within VOCSTATS, you click on the graph view up top here. And you'll just be presented with a few basic line and bar and pie charts. So for this example, I'll change it to a stacked column. And we can see here, if I hover over major cities, that's like your Melbourne's southeast or Melbourne's west, the outer regional areas, it's more likely to be the northwest, Latrobe or Gippsland. So I'll remove ARIA now, and I'll add one of our NCVER classifications. So the one we use regularly in our reporting is NCVER IRSD. I'll add that to the column. And there's no data here to remove, so I don't need to suppress any zeros in the columns or the rows. With graph view, and this one I'll do a stacked percentage column. So we can see here, most disadvantaged here is the blue. So the most disadvantaged areas are Northwest and Ballarat, and the most advantaged areas are Melbourne's inner east and Melbourne's inner south. So it's also possible to download this information into a PDF just by clicking on this download graph button up the top right hand corner. Alternatively, you can save it to a PNG file, so that's just a standard picture file. So next, what I'm going to do is show you how to build tables using databases for vet student outcomes and apprentices and trainees. So I'll go to the data sets here, and firstly I'll look at the student outcomes. Two options here, government funded or total vet student outcomes. I'll click on total vet student outcomes. So to build tables for student outcomes, you need to start by selecting the year, and we'll choose 2022. The next thing you need to do is make sure you select a group from the student attributes. So if I open that up, it gives us a few options. I'll bring them all across just for this example. And I'll remove the total. And the next thing I'll do is select a variable from the list here. Under here, we've got satisfaction attributes. I can choose satisfied with the training overall. So if I open that up, we can see we've got satisfied, dissatisfied, neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. So when we're building tables here, I'm going to select these three. I won't include that one. I'll leave not stated out, and the reason for that is the data. Actually, first I've done something wrong here. Okay, that's better. So the reason for that is when I build the table, what you'll get for student outcome databases is the data display and showing the estimated population rather than the proportions, which is what we use in our national reports and other products like the data builder. So to match our reports and other tools, what we need to do here in VOCSTATS is just to create the proportion using the percentage function. So what I'll do there is click on the settings button here, percentages, and then column. And so what you'll now be able to do is, if you were to refer to our vet student outcomes reports on the NCVER portal or the data builder, you're comparing apples with apples by having proportions. Next, I'll look at the apprentices and trainees data. So go back to the data sets up here and go to apprentices and trainees. There's only one database here. So the main difference with apprentices and trainees is rather than having individual years, it has reporting periods. So the data here goes back to 1994, and everything's presented in like a quarterly reporting period. So what I'll do, I'll add a few of these to the table by an example. The next thing you need to do is add a training contract status. So, you know, whether the contract is commenced, in training, whether it's completed, that's the kind of thing we're looking at here. I'll bring all of those across to the row. And I'm actually going to swap these around. So you can actually move these. So if I wanted to move training contract status up to the row, I can just move it up there, and then reporting period so to the row, and then training contract status to the column. I can flip them around, and then I will retrieve the data. So the main thing to keep in mind here is that for this in training contract status, you can't sum these quarters. So this is a point in time contract status, and by that I mean for each of these periods of time, say January to March 2023, there were 387,503 apprentices and trainees in training. And you can't sum those together to make a 12-month period. You have to take them all individually, whereas with the other contract statuses, you can sum them together. So you can, if you wanted to look at commencements, you could actually sum, you know, more than one, or you create your own 12-month periods as well. So that's really the main difference between the apprentices and trainees and things like the total vet students and courses that we were looking at before. Apart from that, all the functionality is the same, and you can build the tables as per previous. What I'll do now is just provide an example of how to concatenate and nest data within VOCSTATS. So I'll pick a periods January to March 2023, and I'll add it as a filter. And I'm only going to be looking at in training data. So I'll click on in training and I'll filter that as well. And what I can do is add ANSCO, the occupation, to the row. Now, if I wanted to nest some of the data, for example, if I was looking at school-based apprentices and trainees, I could just add it to the row again, and it's then going to it's going to nest that within ANSCO. So each ANSCO is then going to be broken up by the different categories within school-based. However, you may not want to do that. You may just want to build a table with lots and lots of different fields stacked up on top of each other. So to do that, I'll remove school-based first. And scroll down a bit there. Now I could just click on gender, and if I drag it onto the table right at the bottom of ANSCO, if I put it at the bottom under total here, it's then going to just add those fields to the bottom. And I can do the same. I'll add Indigenous status and disability. So you can see here that it's possible to create quite a large table with many different fields stacked onto each other, or you can add more complexity to your table by nesting fields into each other. It all depends on your personal requirements, but I think that's what makes VOCSTATS such a flexible and useful tool. So this is now the conclusion of this webinar on mastering data tables in VOCSTATS, but it's worth mentioning that there's also a user guide available here in VOCSTATS, which can be very helpful at the bottom. Right at the bottom of the screen, this little link here will take you to it's like a generic user guide, so bear in mind it doesn't have examples that relate specifically to NCVER data, but it does have information on how to build tables and use the various functions within VOCSTATS. So what I'd like to now do is just open up the Q&A session. Just a reminder that questions and comments can be submitted using the questions panel to the right of your screen. And we've got a few different questions here. So what I'll do, I'll pop my camera back on. So one of the questions is, can I open up a table that I've previously saved, just to provide an example? So if I was to click on, go back to data sets. And we'll click on program enrollments. So we did save a table in program enrollments. So it's pretty straightforward. You can just double click on that table, which was the first one that we created, and it will just start building and populating it for you. Okay, one of the other questions is, can I filter the type of training by state? Yes, that is possible. So I'll just clear this table and provide an example there. So if we were to have type of training in the row here, we can filter that by a number of different states here. We've got state territory of the RTO head office. We've also got the delivery location. We've got the state territory of the data submitter. And we've also got the state and territory of the client's residence. So there's a number of different options, and it's pretty straightforward to be able to do that. You can just click on it, drag it across. I'll pop that in the column there. And as you can see, it's just a case of deciding which one meets your requirements. Just another question on how to find the custom data. So I'll just click on custom data at the bottom here. It's just going to take us back to the place that we were at before to develop those particular custom data fields. And on the left-hand side here, you'll always be presented with a list of everything that you've done. So if I was to create 5 or 6, they would all appear here. And In terms of there's a question about whether we can get pre-2015 data, and is there any time series break between these two? So it just depends. So for example, for total vet students and courses, 2015, yes, that's the earliest year. If you did want to find information on vet students prior to that, you have to use the government-funded students and courses time series databases. They go back to 2003. And also we do have some vet installs data as well, going back to 2006. But they are not the same thing. So the government-funded students and courses is a different scope to the total vet students and courses. So you have to be careful about what you're doing there, and you have to just make sure that you provide development sources and notes to your tables when you bring them together. Now, in terms of there was also a question about the formula. So I'll just go back to program enrollments for total vet students and courses. Now, we're adding a derivation that calculating year-on-year change. We can just go back in here and add our formula that we had before, and so once that's in there, if we were to just add it now, we wouldn't have any decimal places. So the last thing to remember is to make sure we add at least one decimal place, and our domain as well. So that was how to do the percent change formula. We've had a few other questions on nested data. I just wanted to just let everyone know that if you do have any questions about things that I've already gone through, there will be a recording via our website or YouTube channel at the conclusion of this webinar, so that you can rewatch everything that we've gone through again. And it doesn't look like we have any more questions, so I'll have to wind up as we're also running out of time. I'd like to thank you all for your time, and I hope you found this webinar to be beneficial. So if you haven't heard, ProFrills 2024 will be held in Perth next year, and further information can be found on the NCVER website. And a short online evaluation survey will be sent by email, and would appreciate if you could take the time to provide feedback, as this would help us improve your experience for next time. Thank you very much for attending our webinar today.